You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
So welcome back to E-commerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve Hutt. Now today we're going to I'm going to call this a side of commerce that I think everybody has encountered along the way. If you've shopped online at all, it could be as a brand or as a shopper. Now, here's the story. Now, what happens, let's suppose this, when a lot of people want like the same kind of like in-demand product at exactly the same time. Like maybe, I don't know, you're trying to buy like a special edition sneaker. I think that's kind of like the biggest thing that kind of happens a lot. Or concert tickets or some other kind of limited release product, only to find out maybe that the process was a little bit frustrating. It was slow. I'd argue maybe even unfair to a certain degree, and maybe you start speculating that maybe there's a lot of bots or a lot of resellers. I have firsthand experience too, and so does my guest. We'll talk about it in a second, where you go in to buy something, you can't buy it, and all of a sudden the exact same item that you're trying to buy is instantly now available on the after-sale market. That is massively frustrating, and I think that's the reasons why I have my guest on today, and he has firsthand experience, not necessarily as a store owner, but more as a regular guy. Like he was literally, I did some research, he was trying to buy sneakers. And Andrew Lipp is the guy that I'm chatting with today. He's the CEO and co-founder of this company called Equal. It's EQL.com. And like his story really started, with missing out like time after time on shoes that he actually wanted to wear, but thanks to bots and resellers, kind of gaming the system, I think he just got fed up with it, with this incredibly broken process, to be quite honest with you. And I'll tell you my inside story when I was at Shopify about how this was duct taped together to try to work. But he left his career at Google. He grabbed a couple colleagues from Google also, and he set up to fix it. And so that's why I had Andrew on the show. So Andrew, welcome to E-commerce Fastlane.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. Fantastic introduction too. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's interesting. You just actually launched your Shopify app, I think last month. I think it's so interesting because I think the challenge right now is that typically these drops are usually for, I would say, like the Fortune 100, like big brands that you deal with, like, originally, like, the Nikes and, Crocs and these Stanley water cups. And like, oh gosh, you have a whole bunch of companies that Foot Locker, you've dealt with a lot of different people. So talk us a little bit about your whole platform for like, you're doing so many of these launches, but like, how did you realize that there was a problem in the market? Was it just your own firsthand experience that said, I got to fix this?
Yeah. So first of all, Steve, you're right. We just launched our Shopify app, and we wanted to bring these elite launch tools to brands of every size.
Right.
Whether a solo creator, growing D2C brand, multi-store retailer, it's now designed for any business with product passion and a community that cares. And that's where we started, product passion. So, I think it was around 2019. Back then, I was a miserable sneaker fan. Maybe I'm a bit old now and I've got a fair few kids and, a little less interested in that part, but I love them nonetheless. And I was trying to get my hands on, it was a collaboration that Nike had released with Stranger Things for the first season.
Yeah.
And I had gone online to get access. They said, it's launching at this time, call it 1 p.m. in the afternoon, jump on and try to get them. And I went on and the site, it just felt funny, but I put my credit card details in. It said I was successful in getting the transaction and it said to come down to the store and pick up the shoe. I was thrilled. Got access to this product. At the time, I knew they were very popular. And I went into the store and I said, hey, I'm here. I'd love to pick up my shoe. Yeah, they said, we don't have a listing of your transaction. I said, what do you mean? They said, we oversold, site crashed, we oversold, checkout went out of sync. And I said, okay, well, very disappointed, but at least return my money, refund it. And they said, we can't. We actually don't even have a transaction appended to your profile. You're just going to have to wait for the bank to return the money at some point. And I thought, it's so interesting, specifically for Nike at the time, a brand all about athletes, but then this one wedge of commerce, launch commerce, they rewarded a poor experience through their retail partners. And we realized, these launches, high demand, excitement, passion, energy, fandom, different types of behavior. You get a whole bunch of traffic on the site. The infrastructure can't scale. You get bot scammers and resellers clearing out the stock. And you ultimately get fans like myself for sneakers, or fans that really like anything, really feeling disenfranchised and pushed out of that community because they don't get their hands on products they love. And we realized sneakers are a proxy for all things excitement out there, whether it's streetwear, apparel, sneakers, collectibles, art, coins, cars, collectible cards, toys.
Yeah.
This wedge of commerce, these fans behave differently for the everyday consumer, but also the operational pain on retailers is significant. If sites crash, if bots clear out stock, if operationally they can't track transactions, if checkouts go out of sync, if you need to scale up engineering capacity, if you need help with support, that's real operational load, and it actually stays in the system for months after launch. We realized there was a real pain to solve for, and that's how Equal was born. Equal born to give retailers these beautiful tools to help them run these launches for products that people love, and to help them, put some operational rigor in these and some efficiency, but also ultimately just get products into the hands of real fans with very little pain.
It's interesting, though. There's a story, some people that are listening may know of this, but Jeffree Star Cosmetics kind of worked with a pretty big YouTuber back in the day by the name of Shane Dawson. I think he had upwards of 30 million followers. I think Jeffree Star, he had like close to over 10 million. So I think combined they had, at the time back in 2019, they had like almost 40 million subscribers. And so they decided to, do a massive launch, but they decided to, and this story I think needs to be told because I think it's going to lead me into the next question about like what the heck is actually going on behind the scenes and what can go wrong. And I think that's where your solution kind of, fits the bill. But this whole Jeffree Star Cosmetics situation, it just turned out they decided to actually record a full documentary about, the product development meetings they had with the product launch they were going to do and shade selection for the cosmetics they were releasing and packaging design and all these financial projections, and they're ready to go. And literally they, turned it on live. So people all signed up. They were watching all these YouTube videos. So it was a lot of hype. A lot of people were pre-signed up. They sent the email out. The SMSs all went out. And boom, people showed up in the Shopify store, coming soon. Bang, they turned it on. And the website broke. And it was an absolute train wreck because I was inside Shopify when this happened. Even though there was some beta flags and some engineering people on staff, and like that, we kind of had an anticipation that there was going to be a challenge, but they didn't realize the scale and the amount of people, these raving fans, as you call them, this fandom, and they showed up. The internet broke, like literally the internet broke. Google was involved. I think it was 6 or 8 hours of a broken system. Eventually, it turned out to be quite a successful because they had a lot of ways of triaging this and getting onto social media, and just it turned into another whole documentary just around the train wreck of what happened with Shopify. Shopify learned a lot, and so now that you know this story, I know you probably already know this. Now that people listening, they know about this story. You can Google it and find out more about it. But what's your thought on that happened? And then let's talk about why it's so tricky and the behind the scenes things that are going on right now with a big drop like this.
Launch is about energy. Launch is about capitalizing on these moments and connecting with your fans. And you actually don't really know at times what that energy is going to look like. So, we're out there to help brands create, control, and convert that energy in these most in-demand moments. So turning that passion into connection, and then turning it into long-term value, revenue, community, growth. And, in those moments, you believe your product is great. That's why you're creating.
Yeah.
But you don't know. You don't know what's about to happen. And there's a few things when you don't know. If you don't know what's about to happen, you don't know the type of kind of experience that's going to be delivered to this fan base. And if you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know how to capitalize on that moment, and really extract the most value out of that moment. And so, when you talk about this story, I get chills a little bit because that's not going to happen in this day and age. And that's what we solve for, is that in that moment of launch, you need infrastructure that can scale to at least be ready for the hot path of users to all swarm on your site. You need to have the ability to understand signals of those users on your website to know who is behaving badly, who is trying to game the system, who is trying to clear out stock, who is using automation and bots to get access to the products. You need tooling that can actually, in a very structured way, facilitate transactions so that you don't oversell stock or undersell stock and get left with stock on your shelves. The perception of excitement is killed when you're left with remaining products that you can't put anywhere, right? So you need to plan for these moments. You also need to plan for, chaos is great. Managed chaos is better. Angry fans scream the loudest. You need to support fashion to ensure that you're actually getting back to them. You need to have a social strategy that ensures that you're actually responding in real time with the true problem and an articulation of how you can help these customers. So there are a lot of things that go wrong, and there's a lot of things you need to put into place and connect together to ensure you're going to deliver the best experience. And that's just on the experience side. Then there's the how do you capitalize on the moment? Right? So how do you actually use launch as an acquisition channel, as the honeypot, as the way to understand your fan, as the way to capture the demand and do something next to the folks that either missed out, either got the product, either feel elated by your brand, either feel disappointed? What is your strategy? Because launch doesn't start and end at the moment the product becomes available. It starts in pre-launch. Are you ready? Are you capturing the interest? Are you setting yourself up for a brilliant launch? It happens in launch. What is the mechanics that you're going to use? How are you going to connect with that fan? How are you going to ensure you take the transaction and make the revenue? But then also post-launch, what are you going to do with those insights? How are you going to action the data? What are you going to go do next with that audience? What are you going to do next with another product? And so you need to be planned pre-launch, in launch, post-launch, right? Tooling to ensure you actually create moments out of launch and actually set yourselves up for great success. There's a lot that can go wrong, but there's an amazing amount of good stuff that can go right with the right tools.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me, I did some research about I think you call it like this run fair technology. And I think it's kind of like a suite of tools and some algorithms that really, and exactly what you're just talking about here, just kind of ensures that like these high demand product launches actually go, as anticipated, meaning fair, bot resistant, these sorts of things. Can you talk about this whole concept around run fair? What are some of the key features, and then what are the unique benefits of it?
Yeah, so Run Fair, we've got a certified trademark, and Run Fair stands for, and you'll see it we've run 10,000 launches across the world. Every one of those launches is stamped Run Fair.
Okay.
And that's anyone from Stanley Cups to Foot Locker to Topps Collectibles, Labubu and Pop Mart. They use the certified trademark Run Fair. Right? Run Fair think about it as a commitment to fairness. And we look at it as that if a retailer wants to use Run Fair, they commit to a certain code of conduct, which is they commit to the launch running fair. They commit to doing their best in getting products into the hands of real fans. So we think of it more as a certification. Now, under the hood, how do we enable that? We've got a whole bunch of proprietary tech that looks at about 50 signals per user to understand how they're behaving, right? We look at everything from IP address, VPNs. We look at a whole bunch of ground data, and then we do comparisons and live learning models against what an entry base should look like compared to what your entries look like. We then start to upweight and downweight in real time based on those signals to ensure that, the right fans are bubbling to the top and are going to get access, whilst those that are looking a little bit shady, behaving poorly, start to actually get dropped down to the bottom, like call it towards the swamp. And so we've got these live algorithms and live signaling models that allow us to really actually start to make the launch or ensure the launch is run fair. So that's our call it bot scammer fraud detection module. But then, that's used together with some of our mechanics and tooling. So, we've got features like a draw, capture all the interest, but then only choose to randomly, based on our bot prevention, sell a certain amount of inventory to that audience. So you capture all the demand, sell to a few. We've got exclusive access tooling. So if you've got a list of folks because they're in your loyalty membership tier 1, or they've gone to your store in the last 6 weeks, or they've spent a certain amount of money at your store and you want to give them exclusive access to a product, right? One by one. We've got tooling that allows you to kind of lock down checkout, have audience controls, and actually give really special access to those people that deserve special access. That's exclusive access. We've got tooling like one-to-many, but controlled. So imagine you've got 100 units of something, but you've got a select group of 1,000 that you want them to still get access, but it's still the quickest person that can get to the 100 gets the 100. So we call it one-to-many or gated first come, first serve, where you get to control the amount of traffic, but it's still a little bit of a competition as to who can get in there quick. We've got waitlist tooling, Notify Me tooling, all that kind of stuff. That's in our classic platform, and a lot of that is being brought into our Shopify app as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's funny with the whole Jeffree Star situation. I know that during these beta flags on, engineering was available. One thing they said was that I think it's between 7,000 and 10,000 live checkouts is what their peak was, what their maximum before they forced people into waiting rooms, just because they didn't want to overwhelm the system and the checkout flow, because you have to ping APIs for Stripe, and sometimes there's address verification, there's fraud scrubbing, there's lots of stuff going on in the background, as you're well aware. And so I think what's unique about your system is that there truly is no waiting rooms or queues. It sounds like bands really can kind of enter, because I think what happens is, unfortunately, is a lot of people think I have to be there in a split second, and people are clicking refresh, and it's taxing the system even more. Talk about this no waiting rooms and no queues and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're really proud of that. We believe that users shouldn't have to wait. And we've run launches, I'm thinking of the biggest launches we've run, free pair for healthcare for Crocs. Crocs gave a free pair of Crocs to every healthcare worker. We ran that. Oh, wow. Or Olivia Rodrigo and Stanley Cups. We ran that launch. Or LVMH. So we do a fair bit of work with them. Tiffany's and the Nike Air Force One drop that LeBron was wearing down the walkway. We've Labubu Pop Mart, right? That product is going wild at the moment. Action Bronson and New Balance, we've worked with Green Day remastering their tracks on Game Boys and singing Fish. We've worked on some of the hottest launches on the internet, and we're proud to say that no one sits in a waiting room. What we've really tried to do is we call it manage the hot path. So understand where the load happens on that consumer journey. And you touched on a few of them: address validation, payment gateway limits, so transaction limits, zero offs on credit cards so that we can actually make transactions off session. Ways to actually ensure that some parts of our experience are static so that we're not calling too many APIs at the one time.
Right.
And so we've really mapped out what are the points of entry, what are the points of interaction, what are the data moments to capture, how do you build a good fan experience, communication, so how do you keep fans in the know, your entry is in, your win and loss status. And we've really ensured that at each moment of that hot path, we've either built proprietary software that can manage load concurrently or sequentially, but a user doesn't feel it, or we've actually worked with third-party providers as inputs and got different rate limit deals to allow for that hot path to run smoothly. So it means that no one has to wait. It means that at the right points in our tech, the right scale kicks in, the right rate limits kick in, or the right kind of jazz hands kicks in a little bit to ensure that the perception of waiting doesn't exist and it feels like a very smooth, very finessed experience.
I see. Now you have this thing, I think it's called, and once again, did a tiny bit of research for recording, but it's called the equalizer. And you've kind of mentioned it a little bit about this kind of like loyalty weighting and stuff like that, where, you're really allowing, shoppers to kind of really be involved, that are involved with multiple launches. And they get to enter draws if they don't win. And talk a bit about this. I think it's so interesting that you're getting a loyalty kind of solution built into people that maybe weren't able to successfully check out. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we have something called the equalizer. We love the name of it. And the equalizer basically increases your chances every time you lose. So it's ultimately this ambition of the democratization of access, whereby, as an example, and it was inspired by the NBA lottery, but you basically, if you enter a launch and you lose, think about how we select, in that your name goes into a hat with everyone else's. Now, if you lose another launch, two of your names go in, so two pieces of paper with your names on it go into the hat. Yeah. Next time, three go into the hat, and so on. Now, there is a whole bunch of signaling happens, but then your name is listed in the list randomly, but then kind of influenced by some of the signaling that we do. But we'll then take, so let's say you have three names in the hat, we'll take your top position of the three for the next launch, and then obviously sequentially happens every launch you enter in there on after. So your chances increase every time you lose on our platform, with the aim that hopefully at some point you do get access to a product you love. And we feel like that's the right way to do light loyalty. I think, loyalty across e-commerce can be done at a very, involved way. It's sometimes very challenging and very hard. We think there's a lovely way just to reward loyalty and connection to your brand in a very simple way that we own, that the retailer doesn't have to, implement and have a currency program and make it really difficult. We just think on the launch side, this is a lovely way to ensure that, at some point, hopefully fans get access. Now, keeping in mind, the world we've operated in to date has been about scarcity.
Yeah.
So, it is hard to get the products that we sell because there is just this natural scenario plays out, which is they're limited. Having said that, the world that we're going into, Steve, is initially we're all about high demand, high stakes launches, right? Where the inventory is low, the demand is high, the infrastructure is required. The world we're going into in Shopify, yes, it starts there, still a high demand, but we're starting to move into this world of launch tooling. Just the ability for any retailer out there who has a connected fan base to actually use tools, good launch tools that help them do everything from exclusive access, invite only, run draws. We're starting to move into a world of launch copilot. How do you create workflows, right? Because workflows are so hard for launch. Knowing template, who do you sell to? How do you sell? What mechanic? What's the outcome? And we're really trying to bring the tools to every retailer out there who call it has a connection to a fan. Doesn't have to be limited run. It just has to be limited in terms of kind of the offer or making it feel special.
So what about those that are listening right now that maybe haven't run their first drop and they're trying to build, or they have product market fit, but they also can see the benefits in having this FOMO, having this limited release and deciding, hey, let's release something 1,000 pieces, 10,000 pieces, and let's just try something out. What do you say to those people that are kind of in their early days? Like, do all product types fit? Because it seems like when I look at some of your resources here and some of your case studies and stuff, it seems like, everything from it's not just sneakers. I think it started there, but these collectible cards. I mean, you're even doing alcohol. It's insane. You're doing everything now. So talk about the different types of product mixes and kind of as you see the business expanding. And then let's talk about the merchants that are listening now that have never done their first drop, and then kind of what sort of feedback can you give them so they could have something successful just to dabble into the market first?
Yeah. So, first of all, I fundamentally believe that e-commerce is boring. It is generic. You're trying to optimize for cart conversion. You're competing with other players in the game.
True.
It's really generic. And I absolutely think that launch is the new world of commerce. And you actually have to think about it uniquely. You have to think about launch as the wedge of commerce that's going to connect not with your customer, but with your fan. Right? And that is the difference, is you need to think about launch as building your fan base, as building people that will fall in love with your products. And I fundamentally believe that anyone can fall in love with a product. You've got people that love pottery or books or guitars or, music pedals or comic books or magazines or artists, or, you can be I think about it as people that love skiing. Right? When Arc'teryx launches their next seasonal capsule for skiing, they're people that should love that, right? Yes. If you're a cyclist and you like Rafa, the brand, the next time they're releasing their new Lycra top, and I'm not a cyclist, but you're probably passionate about it. Every brand has a cohort of passionate people that want a wedge of the world that they offer. And you need to think about that as a honeypot, as a way to create a moment, right? And it is tools that you need to create those moments, right? And you touched on, we started in sneakers. We do now, we work with a hobby shop called Mini Realms in Vegas. We work with Swab Golf, who does golf covers. We've worked with a fishing brand that does unique fish hooks. We've sold cars. We work with Ravensburger to do Disney Locana cards. We've worked with Topps to do Travis Scott WWE collaborations.
Yeah, we saw that.
You said at Lefroy, Suntory, we work with alcohol brands. Any brand out there should be thinking about launch as a strategy, right? Mm-hmm. If you are a brand out there, think about launch as a strategy. What are you trying to achieve with your brand to connect to a fan, and how are you trying to build a moment? And then what are you trying to do to capitalize on that moment? Think about your everyday commerce as something else that everyone else runs for just 1 second. And think about this as the way you connect to your fan base. And if you are a brand out there thinking about that, think about how can I create a moment
Yeah.
with simple tools to tap into the passion of my audience,
Yeah.
build some hype and energy, and actually deliver an experience that starts to build a connection that ends with a community. That's what you want to be doing. You need to stand out, right? There are so many brands and products out there. You need to stand out, and you're not going to stand out thinking about commerce as your everyday product catalog, right?
Yeah.
These launches have a halo effect. Look at Nike as an example, right? We do a lot of work with Nike and Nike retail partners. Their limited release kind of high demand sneaker, call it the scarcity model that they have with their collaborating partners and their launch product. That draws so many eyeballs, but has a halo effect on their entire product catalog, right? Because you build connection. You want to be part of that brand. And if you can't get the product that's scarce, we get the product that isn't, because you all of a sudden feel like Nike's part of me. I connect to that brand.
Right.
That's how brands need to start thinking, is that launch is the kind of the entry point, the gateway, right? And even if you only sell 10 units, right? Even if you only sell 10 and 100 people want them, you've got 90 people that become rusted on fans, right? It's actually not about necessarily the revenue on launch. It's about the moment of launch, right? Launch is the part where things start, where fans connect, where passion exists, and it has this halo effect on your entire commerce catalog. And you need to think about your business as there's launch product and then there's standard product. And if you're not, you're really missing out, because mostly every brand, other than a grocery brand, right? Other than kind of, you'll call it your staples or maybe your FMCGs, can't think about this. But if you are a retail brand, direct-to-consumer brand, if you're a single trader, if you've got product and you feel like you've got a community, launch is where it's at, and you need the right tooling to do it.
It's interesting, like typically, as I said at the top of the show, like for years, like only big brands, like you brought the Nike thing, that only they could really afford. This is very enterprise level kind of launchy kind of thing. Even the thing with Jeffree Star Cosmetics, I said, this was a massive launch, back in the day. The thing was that now Shopify merchants really can access a lot of the same toolings and things that maybe Nike had years ago. I know that you still work with them, but now you can, for $49 plus like some small fees just based on the number of like successful transactions. I mean, it seems like you're like democratizing the idea of more people should launch, to their fan base to build this halo effect you're talking about. Like, it seems so affordable for $49.
But that's it. I mean, what we've realized is when retailers try to run launch, so there's two thoughts we've touched on. One is, yes, we're making this accessible. Yeah. So previously you had to pay for scale ups, you had to pay for cyber and fraud, you had to pay for all these things. We'll put it all in one. It's an all-in-one toolkit. On Shopify, we realized, like, for retailers to run launch, they use between 6 and 12 apps, and they spend a fortune doing it, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing a little Notify Me plugin, and then they're taking a CSV file and they're cutting and pasting it somewhere, and then they're using some audience controls, and they're locking down checkout, and they're doing all these things, right? And we think like that is a lot of load on human capital, right? You don't need to do that, and it's a lot of cost, and it's a lot of apps, right? And you don't want to be swarmed by apps and feel like everything's disconnected, right?
Yeah.
You want an all-in-one toolkit that does it end to end, and we're making it accessible, right? If you want to run launch, and if you want to do anything around pre-launch, in-launch, and post-launch, one app, right? One toolkit that does it well and connects the workflows at a really affordable price that takes the human load away. It takes the operational pain away. It takes the millions of apps you have to use away, right? And it does it well. And the thing about it is it understands launch. Like, we've been running at launch now for over 4 years. And as I touched on, we're seeing how really big brands and interesting brands do it. I compare it to like record labels as an example, right? Like, your record label has your 30 bands, right? And those 30 bands are the ones that, like, they feel Wembley with folks. And then they've got their kind of 600 other bands that they give the tooling to and help them become one of those 30, right? Now, 4 years ago, it was only those 30 brands that were running those launches, right? They were the only ones that could afford to do it. They were the only ones that had the tooling. Now we're making our tooling tried and tested by those big brands, stress tested by those big brands, available to everyone for the right price in a very easy way. And you don't need hype. You just need fans.
So I have a question for you. I read an article from Fast Company, and they kind of named Equal, your company, as kind of one of their most kind of innovative companies that they've come across lately. And like, where is this kind of I'm going to call it hype commerce, but it's kind of like hype commerce. And I think it's so interesting. Like, where do you see this going, this whole scarcity, limited release, as a core strategy? I know you kind of mentioned it already a little bit, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear that it's not just something that you're building. Other people realize that this is actually a really good strategy to have for a business.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And you'd probably have really interesting opinions on where e-commerce is going. And I would love to hear those thoughts. There's a really interesting path that e-commerce is paving. The thing that I believe is that whilst e-commerce continues to evolve, and you might have agentic e-commerce, and you might, shop fronts might become different, or the way that you engage and buy things become very different. The one thing that will remain is building a connection with your fan base. And actually, you're going to have to work harder and harder to do it. And I think that's where this type of launch commerce or hype commerce, or I like to think of it as launch because I no longer think of it as hype anymore. I actually think of it as launch. It's launch because it's essential. It's going to become, I think, some of the only ways through e-com that you're going to be able to truly build connection with your fan base out there. And it's going to become harder and more focused. It's going to be harder to do because it's going to be harder to have cut through because it's going to be competitive, and it's going to require you to put a lot more effort into it because it's these, as I said earlier, it's these types of moments that you create. And whether that's in-store moments or online that lead to in-store, or whether it's activations, or whether it's access or time-boxed offers, or whether it's giving people the chance to earn the right to buy things, it's going to be those types of ways that actually allow you to have a relationship with your fan, because otherwise I think brands are going to go into the background a little bit. And so I think launch is a way to get ahead of that. I think that you're going to now have to have a wedge of your world that you're focused on really delivering a experience, a product launch, with your fan base. You're going to have to think about converting customers to fans, and you're going to have two types of audiences. The ones that kind of don't know you too well, that kind of are told to buy with you because you're maybe the cheapest at the time, or you're the most accessible at the time, if you've got the product in stock at the time. And there's going to be a cohort of fans that you're going to have who are tripping over each other trying to buy from you because they love you. And you need to work out how to make them love you. And making them love you is making them feel special with access to the products that you have that mean something to them.
Yeah, this is amazing. I love the term kind of emotional loyalty. I think that's the only real way. And when you talk about, these different AI bots and things are, there's so many things going on right now, agentic commerce and autonomous systems and all this craziness is going on. But at the end of the day, like, people buy from people, and there has to be this human thing. That's why I talk this, it's almost like emotional loyalty is kind of like the word I want to kind of think about now, because it's just like that, I think is where things are headed. We've always talked about, building a business with raving fans, and when you have these VIP higher tiers that just are out there on social, and and they're not even influencers, but they just love your product and stuff like that. I think that's where your system comes into play a lot, because a business that maybe has not done a drop yet, it just elevates the business even further now, because it's just like, no, they already have product market fit. You already have a seasonal line of product that comes out every year or every quarter. And then knowing that, but then why not have a separate SKU or a range of SKUs that can come out as a limited drop, because that just overall just builds more of that emotional loyalty is what you want. Because I think the stats is better than anybody about the fact that, it's easier, and the lifetime value, it's better to get someone to make a second and third and fourth sale than it is the CAC. This customer acquisition cost, net new customer, is super expensive. And so you've already have customers. How do you get them to buy the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth time? Well, it's emotional loyalty and building raving fans. And it sounds like a launch process is one of the ways of doing that.
Yeah, we see that a fan that wins a launch product with a retailer spends 1.5 times more than a standard.
There you go.
Right?
There you go. Yeah.
We also see that fans tend to buy more in and around launches. We did this fantastic case study with a retailer called Many Realms. And Many Realms are a hobby store. They sell collectibles. And we saw that, many realms, they ran a launch and they used us actually for kind of some bottom scammer detection, but also just to kind of bring fairness to the launch. And it was something like, of those that entered, they made 100% more additional revenue in and around that launch moment via fans buying other things, coming to the site to be drawn there for the launch, and then being shared offers and other things in and around that launch. So you've also got to think about it as, attention, right? How do you capitalize on attention? If you think about it, you're going to get a whole bunch of people in your store for one thing, but how do you actually make them walk out with many things? And so that's also how you've got to think about these moments.
Yeah. It's amazing. So really, it all wraps up to this way. It's ongoing business growth. It's not just kind of like a one-time spike. It's just like there's so much opportunity here in the launch itself turns into a much larger campaign of just overall net more revenue and more emotionally loyal people for the business. Like, it's so interesting.
That's right. That's exactly
Love
right.
it.
Like you touched on it. It's a really nice way to reward emotional loyalty. And I love that phrase, and I'm gonna steal it, Steve. So even though this is recorded and people will know that let's claim it together. So it is, it's emotional loyalty. It's that when you can connect with a fan, they're more likely to buy from you, right? And if you can reward them for their efforts and you can show them that you see them, that they are being seen, that they are being rewarded with access, that their efforts generate results and reward, then they're more inclined to connect with you, right? And you touched on it, and I know it's an age-old saying, but people buy from people. People buy from brands. There are brands that I love. There are brands that I don't love. The brands that I love have treated me great. And there are brands out there that do it so well. Like Kith, a brand I love, does it so well. They've kind of reward their loyalty fan base. They've got these drops they give you access to first. Their product is fantastic. They've got a connection to it. Also they've got a brilliant design eye and an incredible collaboration kind of soul, and they're doing so well. But like, I look at them and all I want is their stuff. All I want in their stuff, right? And that is a brand play. That is a perfect example of connecting with your fan base, right? And what they've done is their loyalty program is brilliant. Their app is fantastic. They reward you for your effort. Now, I want to take that. I want to take that type of style and give it to everyone, white label, new, right? I want to give the tools to retailers so they can connect with they can build loyalty, they can build a fan base, and they can do launch effortlessly and reward that emotional loyalty so people keep coming back for more. Those tools should be available for everyone, and arguably now they are.
They are indeed. So this is all part of the App Store kind of launch. And so what do you think some of the next steps are now? Because I know there's a little like kind of a fast lane bonus or promotion for those that really want to kind of kick the tires a bit and kind of see what your platform can do by installing the app. So what do you think are some of the next steps here for those listening?
Yeah, please jump online, equal.com, and please download the app. Pop the app into your store and try it out. You've got 90-day free trial there. You don't have to pay the subscription. We'd love you to use it, right? Test out an exclusive access, run a draw, see how it works on your product page, see how it works, in your world, and have a play around with it. See what launch means to you and see if you can make it mean more. I'm a launch tragic. Like, I could talk about this all day. I talk about it with brands all day, and reach out to me. Love to hear from you. I'm on LinkedIn, Andrew Lipp. You can reach out there. That's probably the best way. Jump into the DMs and really let's talk launch, right? We love seeing retailers trial our app. We love seeing the learnings. The best way you build product is by understanding your customer base and knowing what problems you're solving. We think we're solving some really fun problems out there. And we think we're giving, the everyday retailer tools to be like those top 30 bands I spoke about at that record label, right? Giving them the tools, well-priced, accessible, and easy tools to run launch, the best way to connect to your fans. So yeah, hit me up. Want to talk about it, but just out the app.
It's beautiful. I'll have everything in the show notes for all of this. Link to a landing page, the 9 they offer. Thank you for that. That's amazing. And just want to wish you and the team continued success. You're clearly solving some amazing problems, things that Shopify attempted to do kind of internally back in the day, but they knew that it it was quite an engineering feat. And now all of a sudden for $50 plus a small kind of transaction fees for a number of transactions, like, it's such a small amount of money net, but man, you get all of this power now instead of being on Shopify Shopify Plus. And some of these big brands, these big launches, I mean, they're paying $20,000, $30,000 a month for platform fees alone just to be able to have this engineering chops behind them, right? And so you don't have to be on Shopify Plus. You can actually download the app as a core merchant, install it, and try it out and kind of come up with some concepts. And thank you for being, transparent and open. And, people can DM you through LinkedIn. I think that's fantastic. I appreciate it. Have yourself a lovely day. And thank you so much for sharing today. I really appreciate it.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. Awesome to chat. I love hearing your experience at Shopify in this exact world. So, any insights you can share with me to improve the product, I'd love to hear about it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Take care, Andrew.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.